everybody. My name is Kathy McCarthy. I work for the West Custer County Library. For those of you who don't know me, I see some familiar faces, but I see some new visitors, so welcome to the library this morning. We're looking forward to Sarah's talk. But before I introduce Sarah, I wanted to take a few minutes to mention we are starting the Winter Adult Reading Program today. As a matter of fact, Sarah's been kind enough to give a talk and kick it off for us. And there are some sheets over there if you're interested in participating. We give out lovely coffee gift cards and gift cards in the community. This year so far I have Peregrine, Sugar Lump, $5 gift cards, and Dutch Pantry. So if you get a bingo row, you can get up to 3 gift cards, for 3 bingos. And there's lots of cool stuff on there. We have a bunch of events coming up this month and next for the Winter Reading Program. So I put some calendars out for those of you who have an interest in seeing what's going on. Tomorrow we are having a wellness walk. It's going to be here in the lobby at noon. I decided something different this year. I don't know about you, but it's not exactly been walking weather. And I think my watch is yelling at me. So I decided it was time that maybe if we all walk together, if some of us walk together, it'll help all of us and benefit all of us. So that'll be at noon tomorrow, and it's going to be every Wednesday at noon for the next 3 months, or 2.5 months. A couple of things that I wanted to highlight that are coming up. We have, on the 30th of January, we have a local gentleman. He's a retired Naval War College professor, Carl Walling, and he's going to be teaching a couple of classes for us. And on the 30th, he's teaching a class on Lincoln's second inaugural address, and then he's going to do another one on Lincoln's Gettysburg Address at the end of February. He is a retired professor, taught all kinds of things, classic literature, all kinds of good stuff. So he's going to offer a directed discussion, as he calls it, and mainly then he uses the Socratic method to teach, and it should be fun. A couple of other things coming up. We will have a grief support group meeting once a month here. We will also have a dementia caretaker support group. So if you know someone who is taking care of their loved one and you think that they would like to maybe participate in this, they are welcome to join us. It's been a long time coming, this one. I've been trying to get this together since pre-COVID, but it's here, so I'm excited for the people who need it. Also, I think anything else that next week on Tuesday, we are having a Zoom call or a watch party if you want to come in person. It's at 10 o'clock. The Sasquatch Outpost, have any of you visited in Bailey, Colorado?
I have.
Okay, I have to take my granddaughter there this summer. Thank you, Sarah. So Jim Myers is the head of the Sasquatch Outpost, or the little museum in Bailey, and he's going to give a talk next week through Zoom. He didn't want to travel here, I don't blame him, because it's a good ride from Bailey, Colorado. And we're going to do it through Zoom, and we'll record it if you can't make it. And he's going to talk about his research, what he found, and what he believes. And that's going to be at 10 o'clock next week. So if you want to drop by and watch, or you want to Zoom from home, the invite is on our website. So all of these things are on our website. If you're interested or you want to see what's going on, just visit our website. I have everything posted for the month of January and February. So anyway, these things will be here. I'm also recording this, but I'm recording Sarah. I'm not focusing the camera on any of you. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, because we now have a YouTube channel, and we just started it. We haven't advertised it yet because it only has 1 event on it. This will be number 2. Sarah was kind enough to give us permission to record. So if you had questions and you want to go back and re-listen, you'll have that opportunity. We'll get that posted soon. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. I'm excited to hear what she has to say, as I'm sure all of you are.
Thank you all for coming and braving the cold and whatnot. Appreciate it. While this is starting up, just so I know who I'm talking to, who here has seen a UFO? Awesome. Me either. But I'm always keeping an eye out. Uh-oh.
Did you just go to sleep?
It went to sleep when this went to sleep. And now the aliens are messing with
I hope so, that's what I was
technology.
gonna say. Maybe it's alien technology, huh? You may have to back out and go back in. There you are.
Okay.
I'm gonna leave
Now
this
you get
right
a
here
little
with
preview of what's to come. Okay, well, I was gonna say whether you've seen a UFO or not, hopefully you learned something from this talk and a little bit about what UFOs have to do with US history and all kinds of stuff. So, but since none of you, I think, have seen a UFO, we're all in the same boat, we can get started from the same place. And this title is from this book that I wrote all about UFO culture and why flying saucers are so prominent in American culture. So I got into this topic around 2017. I don't know if anybody remembers this big fancy New York Times story that came out at the end of 2017. Does anybody see that about a Pentagon research program into UFOs? And it came with 3 videos that allegedly were from military service members who had seen things and recorded things on fighter jets or from naval ships. And our next technical thing is to see if this video will play of one of the UFOs.
Are they messing with us again?
They are messing. They really, they don't want this talk to be seen, I think. So that's okay. We don't need to see it. It's just, so this is a video of naval aviators who see this little thing flying around, and this is their sensor that's lashed onto it, and they're following it around and talking about how crazy it was. And so this story, this is the New York Times headline, "Glowing Auras and Black Money, the Pentagon's Mysterious UFO Program." And this was on the front page right before the holidays in 2017. And what was remarkable about it is, there have been photos and videos of UFOs for decades and decades. But this one was videos from the Department of Defense and in the New York Times, which is serious. If you saw something like this in the National Enquirer, you'd just be like, oh yeah, that boy, born again, something like that. But because it was serious journalists and the actual Pentagon talking about UFOs, people, took it seriously. And so this article described this program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, because the government always needs fancy acronyms. And it was a research program from the Department of Defense to look into sightings, like the ones in these videos, and try to explain them, or at least that was the story. And this New York Times article described the contractor that was in charge of this program. It was a company called Bigelow Aerospace, which is out in Nevada. They make inflatable space stations and look for UFOs, apparently. And it described that they were looking into UFO crashes. They were looking into physiological effects that UFOs might have on people. And the article kind of implied not just that UFOs are real, military service members are seeing them, but also that no one can explain them and they might not be of this world. And which is a pretty crazy thing for the New York Times to say, really. So it also kind of showed, the government had said for decades, we have no interest in UFOs, that's for conspiracy theorists, we don't research those. And then this program, which ran from 2007 to 2012, became public, and everyone was like, gotcha, you did care about them. And so there was a resurgence of interest, not just among people who, are in their basements with the red string making conspiracy, plot lines, but just regular people, and also people within the government who weren't aware that this program was going on. And so the story blew up. These are a bunch of other headlines from places like ABC, CNN, NPR. Everybody kind of covered this story at the time. At the time, which is crazy that this was like 8 years ago now, 7 or 8 years ago. I was writing a column for Wired magazine at the time for their science section, and my boss was like, hey, there's this crazy stuff in the New York Times. Why don't you go look into it, see what you can find, see if you can add something to all of those headlines, because it seems like a little weird and a little suspicious. So anytime somebody pays you to go research UFOs, I think you say, yeah, sure. So I said, yeah, sure. And I just went and I started to try to look into, what actually is this New York Times article saying? What can we confirm? What's kind of fuzzy? What can we not confirm? And right away I started to turn up some sort of fishy things. I actually, I got to go to the Pentagon, highly recommend, pretty fun, and ask them about UFOs. So double if somebody says, I'll pay you to write about UFOs and you get to go to the Pentagon. Like, yeah, if you guys can make that happen for yourselves, that would be, we should all go together, I think. So I went to the Pentagon. They said, those crazy videos that we couldn't just watch, we didn't actually release those. Those didn't come from us. And that program, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, it didn't actually research UFOs at all. The guy they said was in charge, he had nothing to do with it. This was just a program, a little, few $1 million program to research advanced aerospace weapons. And we don't know why people are talking about UFOs. And, that's confusing, I think. And if you read the original article, you also, probably didn't hear about all these weird things popping up. But I'm a journalist, but I'm sort of a conspiracy theorist at heart, in that I love a mystery and I love to try to deep dive on something. So I spent a lot of late nights on the internet kind of trawling around trying to figure out what's true, what's not. Is the New York Times telling the truth? Is the government telling the truth? Why are they in opposition? And in doing that, I started to talk to people who I didn't know were interested in UFOs, like historians who study this from the perspective of the idea of UFOs has been with us for decades, and how has it evolved over time, and anthropologists who say, this is an important part of our culture in movies and books and TV and, tourist attractions, and why is it such an enduring phenomenon. And, I mostly write about science and technology, hard science and technology, so I had kind of thought, UFOs off in the corner, just a crazy thing. And then I discovered this very grounded group of people who were interested in them anyway. And the thing that united them all for me, and also what made me interested, was that the UFOs are this persistent mystery. Whether you've seen them or not, which we all have not, they are a question mark in our culture, and nobody's ever been able to say definitively, this is what people are seeing. And so you get the idea in your head well, maybe I could be the one to figure out what all the UFOs are. Spoiler alert, I was not the person to figure out what all the UFOs are, and no one else has been either. But if you like problem solving, you like mysteries, you like going hard on finding archival documents and things, it's a pretty fun topic. Oh, I was supposed to skip to that slide earlier. So this is serious literature right here. To understand how UFOs came to have the place that they have in American culture, it sort of helps to go back to the beginning, to this guy named Kenneth Arnold, who had the first modern flying saucer sighting in the United States or worldwide back in 1947. Has anybody heard of Kenneth Arnold before? Okay, great. We'll all learn something. So for this part, I was just going to read a little bit of his story from this research that I did. So In terms of modern UFO sightings, the first happened to a pilot and businessman named Kenneth Arnold. In 1947, he was flying his Cal Air A2 between Chehalis and Yakima, Washington, when he took a detour to search for a downed Marine Corps aircraft. There was a reward for anyone who could find the plane and who couldn't use $5,000. Arnold flew around searching for a while and accidentally found something else, something much stranger than what he'd actually been looking for. As he watched, 9 objects flew through the air in formation. That's nothing crazy, really. You would call it a fleet and go on with your day. But the craft appeared to be traveling much faster than the jets at the time. Arnold allegedly clocked them as they flew between Mount Rainier and Mount Adams at significantly more than 1,000 miles per hour. When he landed back on the ground, he claimed later, he told an East Oregonian newspaper reporter that the objects skipped like saucers on water, referring to their motion. The reporter wrote, however, that the craft appeared saucer-like. Journalists are always getting things wrong. The line soon rushed out on the AP wire, and the term flying saucer showed up a day later, the first of many times to come, when the Chicago Sun ran the headline, "Supersonic Flying Saucers Sighted by Idaho Pilot." It seems impossible, but there it is, the article ended, quoting Arnold. Arnold's sighting marks the origin point of modern UFO lore and terminology. His story contains several archetypal characteristics, which it would, since it was the first. There are lights in the sky, spotted by a pilot who knows the sky and what should be in it, moving fast and with erratic, intelligent-seeming choreography. Those are kind of the same characteristics that are true of the 2017 New York Times story. Like, here are these military pilots, they see things in the sky, they know what they're looking for, so they know when something looks strange. And so this is a book he wrote. I don't know who these people are or what they're doing there, but they look like they're having a good time. Kenneth Arnold's status as a pilot and the 2017 and 2018 military pilots, they have credibility because of who they are. And so I think that's what gave things sticking power. And just like a lot of people kind of heard mumblings of the, we got some peekers, the 2017 official military videos, like whether you remember them or not, like there were probably some mumblings in your social circles at the time. A lot of people in Kenneth Arnold's time heard something or other about his sighting, especially because back then everybody read the newspapers, and this went out on the Associated Press wire. And so it was just actually like 2 weeks later that a rancher in New Mexico had some debris show up on his ranch. He thought, hey, there's this weird pile of rubble that came out of the sky and landed on my ranch outside of Roswell. Maybe what I have found is another one of those things like Kenneth Arnold saw, because it was just kind of on everybody's minds. And so this is a picture of some military people investigating the wreckage that he found on his ranch. And so he called the local sheriff called the Army Air Force Base, and these are the Army Air Force, because there wasn't a regular Air Force yet, guys investigating it. And the crazy thing about this story is that the Army Air Force actually put out a press release that said, hey, this rancher found a flying saucer. Can you believe it? And if you can imagine the Air Force doing that now, wild. But then it didn't take long for them to take it back after. Oh yeah, here you go. I forgot I put this up here. So it goes in the newspaper. The Army Air Force captures flying saucer. It's just, I can't believe that. And then a few days later, after they did investigate, they said, actually, we take it back. That wasn't a flying saucer. This was just a weather balloon floating around in the sky that happened to crash on this guy's ranch. And you can tell it was a different time back in 1947 because people believed that. Today if the Air Force said, hey, we found a flying saucer, psych, just kidding, it was only a weather balloon. If you can imagine how that would go down on the internet, people would never believe the second part. But they did back then. It was a more trusting time of government. It was just after the Second World War. People just wanted things to be sort of peaceful, and so kind of amazingly, this story just disappeared for decades. They said, just kidding, we didn't find a flying saucer, and it just went away. Until actually the 1980s, which is the version that we probably all know. Actually, who is sort of familiar with Roswell story a little bit? So in the 1980s, there was this journalist who somehow got in touch with one of these guys, I think actually this guy, who had been investigating the debris, and he was a lot older, and he was like, I want to tell my truth about what we actually saw in Roswell, and it actually was a flying saucer, and I'm ready to put that out in the public now that I'm 80 years old. And so the reporter who talked to him wrote a book and said, here is what actually went down in Roswell. It was a flying saucer, it did crash, this guy says so, and he was right there. And that's where the revival of Roswell came from. And after that spawned many more books, movies, TV shows, things like that. And the story kind of morphed over time. So there was not just one crash site, there were two crash sites. There wasn't just this weird aluminum foil looking stuff. There were alien bodies and all kinds of stuff. And it just sort of snowballed and took off through the 80s and 90s. Until in the 90s, which was, the X-Files were beginning, aliens and things were a really big part of the culture. There was a lot of public outcry, including from New Mexico political leadership, to say, hey, you're not telling us the truth about what went down in our own state, and we really want to know what happened in Roswell in 1947. So the government said, okay, fine, we will release all of our files. We'll put together a big report. It's actually a pretty interesting report if you have hours and hours you want to spend reading about UFOs. There's like 400 or 500 pages of everything they have about what happened in Roswell that they just released. And the conclusion in the 90s from the government was that it was not a flying saucer, it was also not a weather balloon, it was a top secret nuclear test detector that was flying in a high altitude balloon and crashed. So they were using acoustic devices and listening for whether the Soviets were blowing up nuclear weapons, and they sent these things around the earth in balloons, and they would, when they were done, just crash. And they actually called the people who would go find those crashes balloonatics, because and so in saying this, the government was saying, like, we did cover something up, like maybe we weren't covering up a flying saucer, but we did lie to you on purpose so that you wouldn't find out about our top secret project. And of course, people don't like that. People don't like to be lied to. And if the government lied to you before, why would you believe what they're saying now? And so, a lot of people don't have much faith in that government report, which also says that the alien corpses people said they found were just, pilots who were in accidents or test dummies that were going up in aircraft, and that over time people had just kind of morphed all of those into one story. And a lot of people don't buy that either. But in researching Roswell, something that was really interesting to me was a book that two anthropologists and one of the physicists who worked on the nuclear test detector, that they wrote together, kind of analyzing the different versions of the Roswell story and how it evolved over time. And they took it, they researched myths and how stories go through a culture and evolve over time. And they said that the different elements that change over time, like whether there's one crash site or two crash sites, or alien bodies or not alien bodies, kind of suit themselves to the culture of the time, but that there are stalwart elements that stick around, that are kind of become our cultural ideas about UFOs, which are the government wants to keep aliens secret from you. If you see something weird in the sky, it's a spaceship. Spaceships, for some reason, crash when they get to Earth, even though they've flown across, the whole universe. Mostly, the biggest thing to come out of Roswell is the idea that the government wants to hide what's going on with aliens, and that there are people who, like, the journalist who wrote the original book, who want to set that information free. And so it kind of sets up this, antagonistic dynamic between people in the public who want the information and the government who wants to keep it secret. And so it's like an us-them dynamic that has kind of continued through today. And now, now Roswell has kind of taken on a life of its own. It's kind of the ultimate UFO lore. And so Roswell has a UFO festival. I don't know if anyone's ever been to Roswell. There's not a ton going on there really, but the UFO festival is pretty fun. That's my sister. And that's my old dog who's not with us anymore, but who had a great time at the Roswell UFO Festival in 2018. And it just kind of goes to show how far a story can go when it hits on, either when it's true, depending on what you believe, or when it hits on these cultural ideas and just really snowballs. And I think that happened with Roswell, and I also think in a way it has happened between 2017 and now, which I'll get to a little more later. In some versions of the Roswell story that came after the initial one, they the Army Air Force collects all that debris that you saw in that photo and takes it to this top secret place called Area 51, where they research it. And Area 51, I'm sure you're all familiar with, is kind of synonymous with alien cover-ups and UFOs and secret things going on. The idea is that the government takes things like the Roswell saucer, puts it kind of underground somewhere in here, and works on reverse engineering this alien technology so that maybe we could have our very own flying saucer, or does experiments on actual alien bodies out there. And so a question that I came to when I was doing my research was how did Area 51 get that way? Why did, either it's true and information has leaked out to that, or to that effect, or there's some other sort of origin point. And the origin point is actually just this guy. It's just one guy. His name is Bob Lazar. Has anybody heard of him? Okay. Yeah, he in the 1980s went public. He went on Las Vegas television and he said, I'm a scientist. I work inside Area 51, and I have seen evidence that they are reverse engineering UFOs and that aliens have been meddling in world affairs for a long time. And this was kind of like the story in 2017. It went from Las Vegas news all the way across the world. And it was really just this guy just saying one thing, and he couldn't prove it. He didn't have any evidence, but it was a very compelling story, and it's also one that's impossible to prove wrong. They're not letting us, unfortunately, into Area 51. We can't go search it and say, hey, we don't see any alien spaceships here. So it's unfalsifiable. So it's pretty impossible to know, is there any amount of truth to what he's saying, or is there not? And so it can just kind of stick around. The actual story that we do know some truth about Area 51, even though it is very secret, is that it's the place that the CIA set up to first develop stealth aircraft, like the U-2 spy plane. And it's way out in the Nevada desert. Has anybody been out there? It's
I went past it.
Okay.
Way across the desert.
Oh yeah, that's
Scary.
a lonely road. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see any jets or anything flying
Yeah,
around?
there's a lot of military. Don't come in here, warning, keep out. Scary government.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is scary. It is scary government stuff. Yeah, we don't exactly know what goes on there today. I mean, chances are it's like the 2025 version. Also, I'm glad I said the right year. I almost said 2024. Version of developing stealth spy planes, but we don't know exactly, and the existence of the space wasn't even declassified until 2013. But I have also been out there. I've been there camping a few times, not inside. They don't let me inside, unfortunately, but outside. It's all Bureau of Land Management land, so you can kind of camp anywhere nearby, right up to the border, right up to those very scary signs that says, like, we'll shoot you if you come in here. And it was really crazy. The first time I went, which was I think I first went in 2018. As soon as I drove like into the valley where it is, I saw what looked exactly like a flying saucer, just like 4 or 5 little orbs, orange orbs in a saucer shape, kind of hovering over the land, and then disappearing, fading out, and then like over here, the same thing. And I was like, that is insane. And then you drive to Area 51, you see something that looks exactly like a flying saucer. Immediately, the government is messing with me right now. And then I was camping with my sister, who was in that other picture, and another friend from Denver. And so we set up our camp, and then we looked up in the sky, and there was this like matrix of little white lights, just perfect rows and columns across like a whole half of the sky that just like popped out of nowhere, like moved like this all in unison, and then just disappeared. And I was like, again, that's crazy. And then, I mean, there's other creepy stuff, like there's cameras and road sensors everywhere. So if you were driving around close to the border, I don't know how close you got to the border, but these scary guards in white trucks will follow you around, even if you're in the public part. And like we camped about 2 miles from the border, and every hour on the hour, the guards would come like within 100 feet of our camp and just shine their headlights at us and honk their horn. To be scary. They're probably like 25-year-old dudes who are just trying to not be bored out there. Because you know, you're allowed to be there, it's public land, but it's a mysterious place. You know, you go there are mysterious things that happen, there are secrets that the government wants to keep. Yeah, so I was there to work on this book, and so the next day I went and met up with a guy who lives there, who's been doing research on Area 51 for like 20 years. He got so obsessed with it that he like quit his job and moved to the town there, which is dedication. And I was like, hey, these are the weird things that we saw last night. Can you explain them? And he said that the saucers were, you know, fighter jets chasing each other, and they dropped little flares in a pattern for simulated missiles to kind of chase. And the pattern is they're flying like this, and so it looks like a circle in the sky. And he thought the little white dots floating around in unison were probably like a fleet of drones or something like that. But what was amazing to me is like it's super clear how you would go out to Area 51 and be like, there's definitely UFOs here, because you go there, you see strange stuff, and it is, you know, there's no evidence that it's aliens, but it's definitely a government secret. You know, it's a secret that they want to keep, and there is stuff going on there, and it doesn't look like normal things that we see in the sky. And what this researcher's name was, he was German, his name is Jörg Arnu, and he pointed out that like it has benefited the government to be able to like let Area 51 have the gloss of UFOs over it, to keep, you know, prying eyes away from its actual secret projects. As cover, just like in Roswell, where they were like, hey, it's a flying saucer, don't look over here, it's not our secret project. And so, you know, it's the same story again and again. Yeah, so, also this is Jörg Arnu, the researcher. You know, you can't go in the base, but you actually can point a satellite at it and take a picture. So over the years, he's been doing like GoFundMes to fund satellite pictures of the base. And so he's gotten these, if you go on his website, which is Dreamland Resort, he has a bunch of labeled diagrams of all the things he thinks are going on in Area 51, which the government loves. He's been raided by the FBI several times, so good for him. So after every UFO story, I have to have a weird little tourist thing from myself, and so this is just to show again that the lore around these UFO sites persists into the present day, regardless of where it started. I don't know if anybody remembers the Storm Area 51 event from a few years ago. Anybody? It was like a Facebook event that there was this college kid who said, "Hey, mostly as a joke, I want to know what's going on in Area 51. If we get everybody from the internet to come together and raid the base, they can't stop all of us." And I was like, they absolutely can. It's literally their job. But he started it as a joke, and then people took it seriously, and like 1 million people RSVP'd to go raid Area 51, I think in 2019, maybe. And 1 million people didn't show up, but a few thousand did. And it was mostly like, not to bag on the youth, but like TikTokers and YouTubers who just wanted to film themselves in front of the gate, and then also this guy who let me take his picture. This is actually the front of the base. There's like super security just behind those hills, but they have this like little dinky security out front to sort of scare you away. But again, this is just to show, like, years and years later, after Area 51 came to be known for this stuff, still the lore around it persists, and depending on what you believe, it's either because it's true, or just because nobody can prove it wrong, and it's kind of fun. And there definitely are secrets there, whether they're aliens or not. And also Bud Light made a special can just for the event, and that's stashed in my closet somewhere as a souvenir. And so it was mostly pretty young people who came to that event. And I think a lot of them had sort of gotten interested in UFOs around the 2017 big story about the military program, and didn't necessarily know the history of the military's interest in UFOs. And the government has actually been running UFO research programs for a long time. These are 4 of them that we know about that started pretty much right after Kenneth Arnold's first sighting and went up to 1969, which is when this one called Project Blue Book ended. And they all kind of had the same structure, which is the structure the New York Times said the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program had, which is, we will take sightings, either ones from just people or members of the military. We will investigate them and try to find out what they are, try to find out whether they're truly something anomalous or whether they're just, weird normal stuff in the sky. And there's a lot of evidence that wasn't done in very good faith. Like during the Cold War, the government was actually worried that we would all panic about what was in the sky, and that would cause a national security crisis, because if Russia was actually doing something but everybody was worried about UFOs, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference and respond. So what they wanted to do was calm people down. They wanted to investigate a bunch of these sightings and say, look, that's just a weather balloon, that's just a nuclear test detector, there's nothing to see here and nothing to worry about. And so that was the goal of a lot of them. And it also had the effect of kind of steering attention away from those secret projects, those real secret projects, like the ones going on in Area 51. Like, I think the CIA did a study that said that more than 50% of the UFO sightings in the, I think the 50s and 60s were the U-2 spy plane, just people seeing it. But the government didn't want anyone to know that plane existed. And so they said, hey, good job, you saw a flying saucer, you saw a UFO, pay no attention to what we are doing. And so it kind of serves this dual purpose. And it also keeps attention away from times when the government might not know what other countries are doing in our skies, which I think maybe you see some with drone sightings now, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but they don't want to be perceived as not knowing who's flying around. I'm sure you remember when China sent that balloon over, like that's a little embarrassing, right? Like we're the United States, we just let somebody's balloon fly over us, and so they don't like that. So attributing things to UFOs kind of steers attentions away from deficits that our own military might have. But at the end of every UFO research program the government has run, there's always, I think the story of UFOs in a lot of ways is the story of just one guy. There's always just one guy from a UFO research program who comes out and says, I was part of this program, the government didn't take it seriously enough, UFOs are real, they're aliens, and they're not telling you the truth, which again is either true or plays exactly into our cultural ideas about UFOs. And so this is a guy named J. Allen Hynek. He was in charge of Project Blue Book, the one that ended in 1969, and he came out at the end and he became just a UFO evangelist. He said, I saw things that we couldn't explain. Sometimes we lied about our explanations, and now that I'm not part of the program, I'm here to tell you the real truth. This is a guy named Nick Pope. He ran the UK's program for their Ministry of Defense. He did exactly the same thing. J. Allen Hynek isn't around anymore, but Nick Pope is. And he kind of travels around saying, I ran the UK's program, they didn't pay enough attention, you don't have the truth and I'll give it to you. And on the left there's a guy named Luis Elizondo who allegedly ran the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program in the 2000s, and says he retired from it because no one took his work seriously, but he had seen things that were disturbing and no one could explain, and he had to leave government to go public with it. And yes?
He has a new book out. We have it on the shelf in the nonfiction section.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, he's written quite a bit since he's, I'll just say, set himself free. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah.
Or retired.
Well, I'll race you all to get it because I haven't read it.
Hopefully it's still on the shelf.
I imagine it would be popular. Anyway, yeah, so the point is, like, it's confusing, right? When these guys are inside the government doing this work, they don't say anything, they leave, they say, now I want to tell you the truth. The government says, like with Luis Elizondo, they say he didn't even run this program. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And, from the outside, without security clearances or access to all of this, like, how are we supposed to know what to believe and who is telling the truth? And so I think for that reason, out in the public with just us, UFOs kind of function, I think a lot of people would like UFO study to function like a science with hard data and analysis and things like that, but we don't have the hard data that they have or don't have, so it functions often more just like a community, and sometimes like a spiritual community that's based less on hard data and more on personal experience, because that's all anyone in their everyday lives can really have. And that's what a lot of the anthropologists that I talk to, that's like their favorite idea, that like the important part of UFOs to people who aren't running government programs is like the effect that having a sighting has on an individual person. There's my old dog again. And I think you can see this at a lot of UFO, tourist attractions or UFO meccas. These are pictures from the UFO Watchtower, which is actually just on the other side of the Sangres. Probably some of you have been there. It's a little place. They have a little platform where you can get 20 feet closer to UFOs and look at them. You can go camping. They have a museum where people like write down their own sightings that they've had in the San Luis Valley or nearby, and then a history of more official sightings that people have had. They have this garden where there are these two aliens. They say I don't really know what an energy vortex is, but they say there's an energy vortex and there's two guardian aliens looking over this garden, and people just leave little mementos of themselves here. I've left a few things there. And then, you know, they go camping, they look for UFOs, they gather and share their stories in a way that is like meaningful and communal and things like that. And this lady right here, her name is Annie Eidecker. I think she just moved on from working there, but she worked there for 6 or 7 years. She'd had like a really hard time before she found this job. She had kids really early. She had substance abuse issues. She'd been homeless, and then just kind of made her way to the San Luis Valley to try to start over, get a clean slate. Found this job, you know, manning the desk at the UFO Watchtower, and really just like, you know, had a stable life, turned her life around, reconciled with her kids, and helped bring people together by sharing their UFO stories. So I think, you know, everybody can believe what they want about what UFOs are or are not, but I do think that the community can have this like powerful impact on people. And she liked my dog, which is nice. This is my last slide, and then I can take questions. But you know, there is the scientific and governmental side of UFOs still. The Pentagon still cares about them. There's a lot that's happened since the initial videos from the military aviators came out in 2017. There have been more videos, more pictures. You've probably seen some of them in the news, and it is that initial publication from the New York Times, you know, it lit a fire under a lot of regular people. And that, I think, when there's kind of a public outcry, like, what's going on? These UFOs are flying around. You're the Department of Defense. You don't know what they are. That gets them to pay attention. And so they started official research programs that they acknowledge and produced reports about and are collecting sightings. And that's a really big change. They haven't done that in an official capacity since the 1960s, which was a while ago. And so a lot of times when the public pays attention, that is what makes the government also pay attention. And even NASA has done a UFO research program recently to say, you know, we have all this data on the sky, maybe we can look into it and see, you know, how often do we see something unidentified? What can we learn about it? Let me just make sure I don't get this title wrong. There's an all-domain anomaly resolution office. You can't say UFO in the government, so you gotta say all-domain anomaly resolution office. That takes in, you know, if you're, you know, flying a fighter jet, you see something weird, you can report it to them. They will investigate it, kind of like Project Blue Book, and that is a really big change, and it is because of those 2017 stories. And most of the reports they've put out so far have said, you know, we still can't identify most of these things that people are seeing, but a lot of them don't seem really strange. They seem like drones, they seem like balloons, and we can't identify them not because they're very strange and unidentifiable, but because we don't have enough information. Like, that happened 5 years ago. It's just one guy. We can't figure it out now. And that's what, there's a skeptic named Mick West who calls that the low information zone. Like, if you saw something 5 years ago, you're never going to be able to give somebody enough information to identify it now that it's gone. And you know, the Pentagon says we, for the most part, don't see anything that would suggest there's aliens. We mostly see, you know, things that look more like Chinese drones or things like that. But I think it's a pretty big step and a useful one that they are investigating, trying to get a handle on how many things there are, what they're like, even if they're not anything strange. Like, I don't know, if the Department of Defense has a job figuring out whether there's stuff flying around in the sky that shouldn't be, that we don't know what it is, seems like a pretty good job for them. So I'm not mad about that. And I think, you know, historically, they haven't given us much reason to trust a lot of their conclusions, but it does seem like they're being more open now. And Oh, I was going to mention the drone sightings in the Northeast, right? Probably a lot of you have heard about those, and they're just, people are seeing all kinds of things they can't identify. Just because you can't identify it doesn't mean it's aliens, but it does probably mean that somebody should check it out, right? Like, I would like to know. And so, yeah, I guess my grand conclusion is it's good for people to pay attention. Who knows what UFOs are? They're probably a lot of things. Most of them are probably pretty regular. But if there's something truly anomalous, I'll try to find out and tell you in the future. Yeah, that's it. Happy to take any questions that anybody might have.